Good evening. This is David Thommo here for the Rangers Journal. We've got a special podcast for you this evening. I'm speaking with Dagan from the Albion Obsessed podcast, Brighton and Hove Albion supporter. We're going to be having a chat about Abdallah Sima, who's currently on loan at Rangers. Remember to like and subscribe, and hope you enjoy. Evening, Dagan. How are you doing? You okay?
Good evening. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Appreciate being here.
No problem. Do you want to give yourself a little bit of an introduction and let the viewers know who you are and who you support?
Sure thing. Well, if the doesn't give it away behind me, I am a Brighton fan, a relatively new one at that. As of just summer of 2022, I went looking to pick a Premier League team. My daughter had fallen in love with soccer. I had been a basketball and tennis coach my whole life for 22 years and was stepping away from coaching. Buddies had long urged me to pick a Premier League team. And so I did a bunch of research and fell in love with the story of Brighton, their saving, their rise, their owner, Tony Bloom. And what I was looking for, I eliminated the big six right away. I eliminated Newcastle, who had recently had new ownership take over. And I wanted to make a choice of one of the other clubs. And I wanted to pick a club that I thought was built for sustainable success. And so did a bunch of research, looked at the trajectory, and really Tony Bloom was the biggest determining factor in why I decided to become a Brighton fan, because I just thought he was building something that was continuing to ascend. And so that's why I'm here. I started, made a Twitter account, started following the Albion, got picked up by a couple of podcasts, have been a guest. I've become a little bit of a transfer window aficionado, at least as far as Brighton goes. And not necessarily the expert on who we're getting, but just keeping track of all the information and then, doing some analysis on those targets. So I'm excited to talk about Sima today.
Excellent. Well, thank you for taking the time to come and have a chat with us. As I say, good to have you. We're here to talk about Abdallah Sima. He's currently on loan at us from obviously Brighton. When I was doing a little bit of research for this, it surprised me that he hasn't actually played a game yet for Brighton. What can you tell us about his transfer, his move to Brighton, how that sort of came about, and what Brighton see in him really? What we think of him?
Yeah, I mean, so he transferred in 2021, so it's before my time. So I'm not the best expert on the why, though I've done enough research on him to understand sort of the prototype of who he is and what he could represent. The pace is the first thing that jumps off the page. I think was registered as one of the fastest three players in France when he was there. I think behind Mbappe and one other player. But when you're in that category of speed, you're really at a different level. And that for me is the really exciting thing about him is he brings that pace. And that's something that at times we can lack. We have a lot of skill, but sometimes we're a little less than direct. And so, I imagine they saw him initially as a winger, but it seems lately he's drifted more into a more central forward position where, he's on the receiving end. And, looking at the numbers, he's great in the air. He finishes. There's a lot to like. I think, with Brighton and looking at the positional logjam that we have, especially on the left wing, with the Zerbi system, we have sort of those inverted wingers, ideally a left-footed player on the right, like Solly March, and a right-footed player on the left. Matoma, Adingra, Ibrahim Osman, who we're bringing in. Ansu Fati was another one of those guys this year. Adingra ended up on the right after March's injury, but we lacked that left-footed player. Sima would not bring that. And so that's among the things that makes me think, unless we see him as a central player, which I'm not sure we do, I don't see a pathway for him rejoining Brighton. I think it's more likely that he's sold.
As you say, he was in the 2021 season. He moved to Slavia Prague for about £120,000 euros. He scored 39. He played 39 games and scored 16 goals there. And then a year later is when Brighton signed him. It's got it down as an undisclosed fee, but transfer market has it as around about £8 million, which I don't know how accurate that is.
Yeah,
but,
I've read 7 to 8 is what I've read as well.
And that was on a 4.5-year deal, and he was pretty much immediately sent on loan to Stoke, where I think he got a pretty couple of bad injuries when he was there, and only managed 4 games.
Yeah, the injuries have been real. Then he went from there to Angers. Angers
in France. Yeah, he went to Angers, and then obviously he came to the bigger club with an R at the front of it, Rangers. So,
added a whole other letter.
He must have had some sort of OCD and thought, I can't just be playing for a club that's missing a letter there. So yeah, he'd done well, and he was loaned to Andrews, as you say, played 37 games and scored 6 goals. I mean, he's come to us, where I agree with what you're saying. We've played him as a sort of out the left on a front three, but he has at times filled in as a centre forward. And there was a period of 7-8 games where we were really struggling for form. Players were struggling for form, and he really picked up the mantle, was scoring big important goals, and was really looking like he really looked like he took to the team, and he was beginning to settle in. And then unfortunately he went away to the African Cup of Nations and picked up an injury, and didn't even get a game for Ivory Coast. So it's been a little bit frustrating since January, because there is a player there, and as I say, he was really coming onto a good game before he went to the African Cup of Nations. Do you keep an eye on your loan players when they're out from Brighton?
I do, and I have to say I'm thankful there's an account called Brighton Loan Watch that just sort of queues up all the games that are happening. But I follow on FotMob, so all the teams that our players are loaned out to, just so I can kind of keep tabs. And it was notable. I mean, I followed exactly what you were talking about with Sima sort of scoring some important goals and stepping up. I was particularly interested to see how he did in the Europa League, because for better or worse, many of the Premier League fans are very dismissive of, frankly, almost any performance by any player that's not in the Premier League. It's like, well, it's not the Premier League. But it's like, look, you can't make up that this guy is electrically fast. Like that translates. I don't care what league you're in, that's going to matter. And if you're able to elevate over people and get your head on the ball, and you're able to, use your pace and create a little bit of separation and then squeeze a shot off into the net, those are talents that translate. So, there was always, well, he's in the Scottish League. Well, he's in the Scottish League, and that sort of dismissiveness. And it was like, even in the Europa League, it was like, well, he scored against this team or that team. It's like, it's the same tournament that we're in and have subsequently been bounced from. But to me, he looked really impressive in the Europa League games when I did really have my eyes on him, watching the games themselves. I would love to see him, because we have some space in the central attack in particular, but we don't have a lot of space, especially on the left wing. And then on the right wing, I think De Zerbi's system yields itself towards having a player that can cut in on his left foot, so the right back can come out wide, or the left back on. Yeah, you follow me. But it's I just don't know where he's going to fit in right now as a left wing, left midfielder.
Yeah, I guess probably the plan was early on, when you sign a player like that, in the Premier League, 7-8 million isn't a lot of money for a team like Rangers in the Scottish League. That is, you're wanting the finished article, the finished product. I suppose for a team like Brighton, they can take a bit of a punt on someone, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. It can be, and I'm guessing when he got those injuries at Stoke, it would then have just limited his chances.
That warms my heart and makes me laugh, because so teams like Brighton, when I first started following the club, and again, this is summer of 2022, meant little teams, very little teams. And now I'm hearing you talk about teams like Brighton And I expect that means a team that's fighting for Europe, right? Competing at the top half of the Premier League.
Yeah. I mean, Premier League teams in general, they get such an influx of cash that, if you take it to the Scottish League, you win the Scottish League, you get something like £2-3 million for winning it. From getting relegated in the Premiership, you get £30 million. And it's just like I say, it's a different world when it comes to the transfer of players. So I've always been, especially the last couple of seasons, been really impressed with Brighton's transfer policies, and it's something that Rangers need to sort of look at in terms of bringing in players for low amounts and then selling them for millions, because that's what you guys have done brilliantly with like some McAllister, Caicedo, Ben White to Arsenal. It just seems to be a conveyor belt that you guys have, and whoever's in charge of your scouting and recruitment is certainly doing well.
Yeah, I mean it's a bit of a misnomer, and there's this thought that when someone hires away, our scouts or anybody in sort of the football operations sort of roles, there's a thought that, okay, now we've got it. We've got Brighton's secret sauce. And the secret sauce is really, Tony Bloom's proprietary algorithm that no one actually has too far ahead of time. And so I think, whatever he's doing behind the scenes with his software is what's leading the scouts to the prospects to then get their eyes on them. But the data sounds like what we hear is being run behind the scenes before we get to that point. But the success rate is high. And I would say, I mean, at the time, 2021, that $7 to $8 million outlay was a big one for us. I mean, our biggest ever signing going into this past summer was $22 million, Adam Webster. And so, for us, $7, $8 million was not a small amount. It leads me to believe that there was a real expectation that Sima was going to pan out. But I think we've also diversified, our portfolio with Adingra and now Osman. And I think, we do probably invest in several different targets and several different levels, probably per position. But he was, I think, one that was at that price tag would have been one we really expected to hit. The kinds of profits that we've been making off a lot of those guys that you just named, McAllister, Caicedo, it's many, many times over what we paid for him. Pascal Gross, who, I doubt will sell, though I think he wants to go back to Germany eventually. I think we got him for £3 million. He's, a locked on surefire starter. With that outlay, I think the expectation would have been that he would have become a substantial player and one that we could have sold on for 30 million. Right now, it doesn't look like he's that level of a player. I was curious, what would you expect Rangers to do if they were going to make a purchase from Brighton? What sort of price range would you expect that to be, given what you just said about your transfers?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, he's looking. I say he signed a 4.5-year deal when he signed at Brighton. So if my maths is correct, I think he might be out of contract next summer. So with a year to go, I think maybe around about 4 or 5 million, I think could be enough to get him. And I think Rangers would maybe be willing to pay that. As I say, when I was doing the research, it was something that caught my eye about his injuries. And we've had, over the last couple of years, Rangers have had horrific luck with injuries. Everyone just seems to be out with long-term injuries, and so that would be a big thing as well. I think if as I say, we sign someone for £4 or £5 million, they need to be someone who's going to be playing every game near enough and be one of the star men. And if he's someone who is susceptible to injuries, I don't know what his injuries were at Stoke, but I believe it might be a hamstring injury he's got now. But if he's susceptible to these injuries, that may cause Rangers to think again whether we're going to sign him. But prior to him going away to the African Nations Cup and getting injured, there seemed to be a lot of positive talk that he himself was wanting to stay past the summer, past his loan period, and I think the club were as well. So, as I say, if his injuries are all right, he'd certainly be a player that especially with given his age. He's only 23, and yeah, given his age, he's got many years ahead of him. So I'd certainly like to see us signing him. Oh, have you gone on? I think you've gone on mute, Dagan.
I did. I muted.
There you go.
I was checking out his injury history really quickly while you were chatting. I'm gonna run through it. Groin injury, one that just is fitness, ankle injury, back injury, groin injury, hamstring injury. Groin and hamstring jump out,
especially for a pacey player. Yes,
exactly.
Yeah, horrible injuries for pacey players, you know. But like I say, he's certainly a player that I think, well, a lot of the Rangers fans would like to see. And I think it's a bit of a testament to the players we brought in January. Unfortunately, one of them again got a long injury, Oscar Cortez. We weren't overly missing Sima. Now, though, that we're running out of players in forward areas, we're like, when's he going to be back? So hopefully after this international break, he'll be coming back, because we've got a lot of big games left now to try and win the league and obviously the cup. But yeah, what do you think? How much do you think Brighton would be looking for him?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. We don't make a lot of sales that aren't at a profit. But that's even for players that never see a game at Brighton. So it's really interesting to think, okay, we bought him for 7 or 8. Are we just gonna take a punt, as you said, and take a loss on a guy who's been fairly productive? But it seems like, I mean, if you buy transfer market, that his value is sort of, I think it peaked at like 11 million euros and has sort of dipped back down about to where we bought him. I know we're probably going to talk about this. I saw hints of perhaps a sale and swap deal, and I think something like that maybe makes sense and helps make up a gap, make up a difference. So it'll be interesting to see if something like that gets done. I don't know if you wanted to tell folks about that article y'all sent over.
Unfortunately, I haven't seen it, so you're going to have to break the news to me. Who are we giving Brighton? Who are we giving it? Who are we giving Brighton?
So the discussion was around 18-year-old English international midfielder. I believe he's a right midfielder primarily, Archie Stevens.
Oh, right, yeah. Archie. Yeah, he's in the he's in sort of the B team, youth teams. He's getting a lot of good write-ups. So potentially, especially with the youth players, that could be depending if he sees his future away from Rangers as well, could be a deal that works for everyone. Yeah. But yeah, I thought you were going to say something like Jack Butland or something there. I was like, what? Where did this come from? No, hang on.
I was curious. I could not find it. I tried to scour the internet looking for this answer. Is he a left-footed or right-footed player?
I don't know a huge amount about him. I've got to be honest. I would have to go away and have a look at that and let you know.
Yeah, I tried to watch video. I found one video of a goal he scored, and it wasn't entirely clear from the goal. I mean, he used both feet as he progressed down the pitch. Mm-hmm. Oh, he's both footed. Look at that. Okay,
both footed. There you go.
That's very encouraging. We're getting expert counsel. That's super.
And I think as well, when it comes to a Sima transfer, it would depend if there's any other teams involved as well. Are you aware of? Have you heard of any rumors of other teams that have been, interested, sniffing around?
I haven't, and my ear is very much to the ground on those kind of topics. So I mean, that's not to say it's not. It's just to say that there have been discussions, they haven't been talked about.
Yeah. I mean, as I say, I think maybe had he not got injured and he continued the season as he was doing, I think we might have heard a bit more chatter about that. But because he's obviously been out for the last 2-3 months, just sort of almost gets forgotten, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I will say the longtime Brighton fans will tell you when you hear nothing, you should be most invested in the idea that there are conversations happening. So it very well could be that those conversations are happening with y'all about, potential swap deal. And if the ceiling is 5 million, we very much could be, canvassing around to see, are there teams that are willing to pay 7, 8, 9, 10, for him because of where the ceiling is. And I think you guys have seen it, and I think we probably have too. The ceiling is super high, the injury concern. And I would echo your sentiment about the season you've had over the past couple of years. We were just decimated by injuries. We've led the Premier League in the number of changes game to game. I think we had 103 changes through like 26 games or something. Like, it was just mind-boggling, the number of players in and out of the lineup. Some due to rotation to theoretically prevent injury, but most of it due to injury itself.
It's been interesting this season in the Premier League. Lots of teams struggling with injuries. Lots of players getting injured.
Yeah,
like Newcastle, Man United at one point had quite a lot of players out. Liverpool.
Yeah.
Don't know if it's a case of all these games that they're playing. Players are super fit, so as soon as they feel something, they might just, no, I can't play. But what I wanted to talk about as well, obviously outside of Sima, Brighton. I say if we've come the story of Brighton, nearly getting relegated, going out of business. They're now an established Premier League team. Got into Europe this season, unfortunately, didn't progress past Roma. But what do you see as Brighton's, I suppose, sort of glass ceiling? Where do you see Brighton going? Is it winning a trophy now? Going and winning a trophy? Because they seem to be the one. I like watching Brighton. I like watching them play. I think they play a good, entertaining style. But at times, they're just as likely to beat a team 4 or 5-0 as they are to lose 4 or 5-0. So it's where do you see Brighton going? What's success for Brighton?
That's a great question. I'm in the U.S. and this summer Brighton was one of the teams that had the opportunity to come over for the summer series and play here. And so I had the chance to go to 2 of the games, one up in Philly and the second in Atlanta. And they did a meet and greet with fans, just a kind of gathering. And the one in Atlanta, it just so happened that Tony Bloom made an appearance. And this was not like you paid to go, a fancy event. This was just at a bar, a place for fans to meet before the game. And sure enough, the owner of the club, strolls into the bar, has a beer, made time to talk to absolutely everybody in the room. He and I had probably a 5-minute conversation. But when he asked me, how'd you become a fan? I told him what I just told you, right? Sort of because of you. Brighton has moved up now. As of the end of last season, as we finished 6th, 54 places over those 13 to 14 years from where we were at the time of Tony Bloom starting his ownership to the end of last season. When I showed him those numbers, he thought it was cool. He actually took a picture of the numbers on my phone. It's like, I haven't seen these exactly this way before, which is amazing. It was surreal. But I asked him, I made the statement. It just seems that there are bigger aspirations, right? And I alluded to win trophies, to be a steady presence in Europe, to not have this be a one-off. And I will tell you, Tony Bloom, he had a gleam in his eye. It was very clear to me from that moment that he wants to be exactly what he just said a couple of months ago, an established, consistent European side, which is tough to do in the Premier League, obviously, because that means you're going to need to be at least a top, 8 now, given, assuming England remains, having the extra Champions League spot that's going to start next year. It just seemed clear to me that he has that intent. I thought that when I looked at the trajectory of the club before meeting him, I was even more sure, just a little smirk and a glimmer in his eye. I could tell like he has big dreams. I mean, he's a fan of the club. He didn't buy this for fun. I mean, for those who are listening who don't know about Tony Bloom, he grew up around the team, self-made billionaire. And now this is kind of his life's work associated with the club and associated foundations and community around Brighton. So it's not just an owner who's looking to make a profit. And I think he's cast as that when we make these big sales and people don't see the immediate reinvestment. I think he's playing the financial long game and seeing other teams running up against having to sell players And I think you may see Brighton really capitalize this summer on some clubs that have to make a sale. And he swoops in to make purchases because we have the money to make buys that we've been saving over the past several years. Again, he won't spend it all at once because he won't want to hit that, trough 3 years down the road where we run up against the consequences of these finances if the profitability and sustainability rules stay the same. Anyway, sorry, it's a ramble, but I really, really believe that we are trying to become a club that's going to compete for trophies.
Good, yeah. No, as I say, you've as a club, you seem to be well run, and doing the right things. And is there any more Brighton fans over there, or is it just you? You just go down to the pub at 4 a.m. and cheer yourself?
I haven't run into a ton locally. There's a DC group that I went and met up with for the FA Cup semifinal against Man United last year, which ended in complete and utter sadness, of course, on penalties. But yeah, I mean there are a lot of fans. I will say, the community is strong. I keep in touch with a couple of people, around the country, one in Ohio, one in North Carolina. We've become friends. I think having the summer series here brought a lot of people together where they could actually meet in person and see a game. It's one thing going over to see a game and meeting the English folks that you've, become friends with online, but doing it in person here with the other sort of stateside Seagulls, as they're called, was pretty awesome.
Excellent. And just before we wrap up, I couldn't let you go without speaking about another Rangers connection. You've obviously got Billy Gilmour in your midfield there. Started at Rangers, learned everything you knew at Rangers. How do you see things panning out with him? Is he going to be there long term, or do you think he could be another big money sale? Because I was surprised Chelsea let him go. I've got to be honest. I thought he played really well when he was at Chelsea, but whenever I see him for Brighton, he seems to just be flourishing in that centre midfield role.
Yeah, it's again a great question. He's really fantastic. He competes hard. Yeah, he's a jack of all trades in the midfield. He and Gross are similar in some respects. I mean, he's not the inventive passer that Gross is, but he is our metronome in the midfield, right? He's the guy the ball comes through. He drops deeper and receives the ball from the center backs. His sort of rate of checking over his shoulders, is phenomenal. You watch him, waiting to receive the ball. He's always going to make the right turn and make the right pass. He's great. And those are not things that sparkle, right? People take note of when he, blasts a shot from range over the bar. We're like, eventually Billy Gilmour is going to score a goal. He's going to make one of those. But I think some of what he does is kind of understated. And my point of noting the overlap with Gross a little bit is that right now he's kind of miscast into filling the void left by Caicedo. But in reality, he's more of a McAllister who is, again, capable of playing in kind of a pseudo defensive midfielder role, but he isn't really that, right? If you were going to typecast him, you would not describe him as defensive midfielder, I don't think. I mean, central midfielder, sure. But he's not a destroyer. He's not just tackling guys from a mile away. He's small in stature. He's not the most physical guy. He doesn't shy away from it. He's sturdily built, but he's not going to win a ton of balls in the air. Obviously, he's not. I think was he 5'7" maybe.
Yeah.
And so, but I mean, I will say he's a fan favorite. Everybody loves him. We're glad that Chelsea, who has taken so many of our players, gave us a fine one. And you watch some of the chaos going on with them, and you look at Billy Gilmour and think, it's hard to imagine he wouldn't have helped them over the past 2 years. But I'm glad we've had him, and he's really developed well. It'll be interesting to see if Gross, does go back to Germany. Does he slide over and play more as the 8? But really it is a midfield too. So it's different, but you still need one player. I'm thinking at the end of the season, we're going to see more of him paired with Baleba at times to see how that would look.
Excellent. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there, Dagan. Thank you very much for talking to us, and to Rangers Journal subscribers, viewers, get over to Albion Obsessed and give them a like and subscribe, and you can see more of Dagan and his fantastic beard there talking about the Albion. But no, thank you very much for taking the time to come and have a chat with us, Dagan. It's been an absolute pleasure, my pal. Thank you.
Real treat. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Be well. Good luck to you all the rest of the season.
And you. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Cheers.
Well, hello everyone. My name's Billy Rankin, and that was Thommo's interview with Dagan there. Thommo, thank you very much for doing that. Did you learn anything that you didn't know before about Sima from talking to Dagan there?
Yeah, it was interesting speaking to obviously a fan of another team and getting their views. The main thing was, I think, the injuries that Sima's had in the past. Until I started doing a little bit of research, I wasn't really aware of it. Then Dagan just confirming it, really, that he's suffered. He mentioned each injury that he's had there, so that was a bit of a surprise and a bit of a concern, I think, as well, if we're going to be looking to spend a decent amount of money on him.
Yep. Also joined by Scotty. How you doing, Scott, tonight?
Not bad at all, Billy. Not bad at all. How are you getting on yourself, all right?
I'm okay. I really enjoyed that interview. I don't know about yourself.
It was good. It was good. Thanks to Dagan for coming on. It's appreciated, pal.
It was a surprise hearing the American accent. I know there was some comments in our chat there that an Albion fan that's American. But it was interesting to hear that his opinion. It's interesting to see how he became a fan in the first place. It's an interesting way of choosing a team.
Aye, definitely.
It's not the way I chose my team, mate.
Aye, same for me, pal. It's born and bred, ain't you? One of them ones.
Whilst Thommo was talking, that I did a bit of Googling myself before you actually got talking about the interview. The injuries. Were you aware, Scott, of how many injuries he's had in the past?
Aye, I'd had a rough guess. It was only when he signed I actually done a wee bit of digging up on him. Obviously, Stoke only made 4 appearances. He could just pretty much write that year off. I'm not sure what his injury record was like before signing for Brighton, but I know he's not had the best of luck since signing. Obviously, we managed to get a tune out of him the first couple of months of the season. But I don't think he's an injury-prone player. I just don't think he's had the best luck. There's a fine line between somebody that's injury-prone, i.e. Kemar Roof, and somebody that's just had bad luck, you know what I mean?
Thommo, you mentioned it on the pod. It's the type of injuries that you had affects the kind of faster players. Does it worry you though? I got a stat off one of these, the player profile sites. He's missed 64 games in the last 4 years. Can we afford a player that misses that amount?
Well, I think this is sort of a point I was getting at, Billy. I said to Dagan, Premiership teams have no issues spending 5, 6, 7 million pound on a player. And if it doesn't work out, some other team will buy them for that amount. With us, though, if we are going to be spending that amount of money on someone, we need them to be fit week in, week out. And especially over the last couple of years, players that are really important to our team, Kemar, Roof, Ryan, Jack, they've just not been available. And regardless of how good they are or what they could do, if they're not available and we're in the treatment room, what good are they to us? And I do like Sima. I would like to see us sign him. But as I say, the injuries that he's received, especially for a quick player, then it is a bit of a concern.
Scotty, I feel he had a bit of a slow start with the pre-season and the introduction to the first few games of the season. And I remember texting a mate as I'm watching the home game against PSV saying, why have we got this guy? This guy is atrocious. And then all of a sudden, he pulls out that finish. And he's never really looked back from that point. He's 15 goals for the season so far. I've heard people say that he was on track they think he could have been on track for 30 goals if he'd continued that. Do you think he would have got as much?
Aye. Abdallah Sima's a massive player the way Rangers play, especially under Phil Come on. I would have loved to have seen Sima on the right and Cortez on the left going in a title run, and I think that would have been really, really decisive. for what I hear, Sima should be back after the international break. I think the secret behind the amount of appearances he made is getting the pre-season under his belt in the summer. So we're going to see what he's really like when he's coming back from an injury after international break. You'll know if he breaks down or not. If, as Thommo says, these injuries are not good for fast players. I think you're going to find out your answer to whether you want to sign him or not towards the end of the season. And I know the vast majority of the Rangers support are wanting it to happen, but I can see why we're erring on the side of caution. We're being quite balanced on it.
I'm being a wee bit devil's advocate with these questions because I think I do want him. What does worry me, Scott, is the price tag. The figures of 8 million. I don't know if we're in we'll need to see how we finish the league and what money we're going to have, but can we afford 8 million for a player? We're not sure.
I wouldn't pay it personally. I don't think if you look at the big picture and look at his injury record and the budget that we're going to have in the summer, the $4.5 million is already went out on Diamandi from the January or the summer budget. You don't know where that money's come from. Mm-hmm. So that's $4.5 million right away. If you spend 8 million on Sima and that money has came from the summer transfer budget, that's 12 million. It's a lot of money on 2 players, and we've got a lot of restructuring today in terms of the first team squad at Rangers this season. I mean, there's a lot of guys who are contract with Kemar Roof, Borna Barisic, Ryan Jack, just to name a few. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of positions that need strengthened. We need a centre half. We need a right winger. Mm-hmm. We need a centre forward. We need a striker, because I still don't believe that strikers we've got, the striking department's not good enough. And anyway, there's going to be a vacancy coming up with Kemar Roof going out. So there's an awful lot of questions around this transfer in terms of how much you want to spend on him. I mean, are Brighton going to get 8 million for him realistically? I mean, he's had a good start of the season. He's played well up until Christmas. But Brighton, what I'm trying to say is Abdallah Sima earned that transfer price. Do you know what I mean?
Well, 2 questions then, Scott, before I go back to you, Tom. Do you want him, and what's your limit?
I want him, yeah. I would say 5 million with a sell-on fee is the way forward. I've just seen RFC 56 pop up there. Is Matondo going to be sold? That's how you can get like him and Wright. So if that's 2 out, and say that's maybe £2.5 million between them 2 players selling, that's money that can go towards sale. If Rangers do their business properly, it can happen. I do want him. I'm not saying I don't want him. I'm just being a bit like yourself, Bill. I'm playing devil's advocate because it's a risk. There's still an element of risk to his transfer because of where his injuries have been.
Thommo, then, if I can come to you, I guess feel free to elaborate on it. But is it are you wanting him, and what's your budget?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want him. I was much like yourself in that sort of first game against PSV. There was some expletives used in that first half, and then all of a sudden he pulls something out of the bag. And as I said in the interview with Dagan, when we had players struggling for form and people were injured, he did take centre stage and scored a lot of important goals. You know, he stepped up. And there's a risk with any player when you sign them. It doesn't matter who they are, there's always that risk. But I think, like Scott says, 4 or 5 million with a sell-on clause, I think would be acceptable. I mean, you look back, we signed Ryan Kemp for the best part of 7 million, and he hadn't really done anything in his career, but that's what it took to get him. And for me, he justified that fee for what he'd done at his time at Rangers. He may have left on a free transfer, but he, Sima has shown that he can play in this team, he can play in this league, and he can play in Europe. So I think 4 or 5 million. He's coming into the last year of his contract. So I'd be surprised if Brighton are wanting any more than that really for him. I don't see them wanting huge money.
Unless
there's a bit of a bidding war. If there's more teams interested in him.
You and Dagan mentioned possible player swap from the youth team. Are you interested in that if it was your decision? Bring the cost down a bit?
Definitely. I mean, I want to see youth players coming through, don't get me wrong, but we need players that are ready now to challenge and win leagues and win cups. We've gone too long without winning things, and Sima fits into that mould. If there's players, especially youth players, that are wanting away, wanting to go try their luck in England, then let's use that to our advantage and have them as a bit of a make weight. But as I say, I think we need to start getting players in that are going to be playing week in, week out, and who are going to make a difference to this team now and get us winning trophies on a regular basis.
Scott, feel free to bring this up, but there's a comment there from RFC72. Do we think we'll either play Sima or Cortez, since both seem to prefer the left-hand side, or do you do what you mentioned earlier on and have Sima on the right? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think initially when Sima was brought in, he was brought in to play on the right-hand side. That's where he had played, I think, the last couple of seasons. It was only when Clement came in that he found he got a run of games out of Sima on the left. So, I would ideally play Sima as a 9. This is a debate that is never going to be. It's never going to come to an end with Abdallah Sima, because he's doing a job at left wing, and left wing's been an issue, and right wing's an issue, because Ross McCausland's kind of stalling a wee bit on his development, I would say, at the minute. I would bring him in, play him on the right, Cortez on the left. And you could change that. You could do vice versa on it, really. You could play any of them anywhere, because they're both really, really good players.
I think that's what Clement's really wanting, an interchangeable front three rather than defined roles for everybody. You mentioned playing him through at the front at some point. I don't know if it was on tonight's pod, but playing him as a striker. Did you like him there when he had to play there?
I just think he's got all the attributes to be a good number 9 for Rangers, because he's good finish, he's strong, he's fast, he's got height, he's got physicality, he's got an eye for goal. I mean, if it was, I think it was Ross that says that his main attributes to play across the front three anywhere very comfortably. So I think it would be cruel not to try him out as a 9. He's very unproven in that position, but if you look at the attributes of the player, that's a grade for me. I don't know about you guys.
Well, sorry.
It's just I'm going to mention something. Dagan said he didn't see him coming back to Brighton. So a move away is the most likely, but also he hadn't really been tried as in the striker role. But where do you feel he fits in the front?
Yeah, I think he can fit anywhere along the front three. There was games earlier in the season where he was played as a number 9. It was only for a couple of games, but he certainly didn't look out of place. And some of his finishing, he scored some cracking goals. You know, there was a header away at Aris, brilliant header away at Betis, instinctive finish. I could see him as a number 9 through the middle, and the debates we've had on it this season regarding Dessers and is Danilo to still come back. It's are we going to be forking out a few more million for another centre forward, as well as potentially signing Sima? I just can't see it happening. So I'd like to see him get a run at number 9 if the forwards we have at the moment are what we go with next season. Certainly wouldn't have any issues. But as Scott said, anywhere along the front three, he does a job. And yeah, he's an exciting player that hopefully we do keep as long as the price is right.
I do agree with that comment that came up a second ago, Scott, that leaving him on the left. I do think that's where he played the best for us, and they say 15 goals. Yeah, 15 goals from the left. I didn't see anything personally. I mean, I know he's got the attributes. I just didn't see anything personal that made me. There was a few calls when we had injuries to play him through the middle as a number 9, but I never personally felt that he'd do a job, but I never felt that's his best position. And I do think he's interchangeable with Cortez, definitely. They could definitely swap mid-game, but several times even. But I prefer him on the wings, me personally, if you're asking me about that. Just going to go back to the injuries. You went through the list, Thommo: hamstring, groin, back injury, ankle injury, and another groin injury. how, I guess you can't really say, how many games would you say that you can miss and still contribute next season?
That's a good question. I think if you're missing through injury, if you're missing 10, 15 games a season, I think you're struggling, especially in today's game where it seems to take players months to get back up to any sort of speed. You know, we don't just seem to come back into the team and play 90 minutes straight away. There's getting their fitness up, getting them back in, getting match minutes. So, you know, if you're missing 10, 15 games a season, I think you're starting to struggle a little bit there in terms of consistency. And as I say, I'll go back to him, but Ryan Jack, I've said it in the past, he's our best midfielder. We're a better team when he plays, but unfortunately, he's just not fit. Never plays, and we need people who are going to be contributing throughout the whole season. Because as we've seen these last 2 years, the injuries piling up, and people need to be available. And I think Clement has mentioned that when he sort of first came in, that he wants players that are durable, who are going to be able to play Saturday, Wednesday, Thursday, Sunday, whatever the schedule might be. Can't be having players that are not contributing and missing large parts of the season.
Scott, we're going to close up soon, but talking about the striking position, Thommo doesn't see us signing 2 strikers, and if we get Sima, I think we need to. Do you not?
Yep, 100%.
Yep.
Says this on the Shankland pod the other night that Rangers are playing a wee bit risky with a transfer recruitment in January. We're bringing in Diamondi instead of spending the money on a striker. I'm not for 1 minute saying Diamondi doesn't justify a fee, etc. It's a completely different subject, but I think we're far too lightweight up top. I think we need a new striking department next year. The only one I would have left is Danilo, because I think he's got a lot to offer. I think Danilo misses a lot of chances, but he's a proven goal scorer. He will score you 20, 30 goals a season if you can keep him fit. But then it's that, my last part of that sentence there tells you everything you need to know. It's if you can keep him fit. The only fit striker we've got is Cyril Dessers. Fabio Silva's not going to be here. We definitely need to bring in a proven goal scorer and a young striker that's going to fit a player's trading model for me, Billy. That, with A2 and Danilo, I think you've got a recipe for a good striking department.
It's never the crap players that get injured, is it?
No.
No, it's always the good ones.
100%, mate.
Well, look, Tom, I'm going to thank you again for that interview. It was really good, and also thank Dagan as well, because it was really interesting the stuff he was saying. He was obviously quite insightful with how Brighton's run. We only obviously care about Rangers, so hopefully we can get something done for Sima. Hopefully he kind of proves us wrong with the injury record, but knowing our luck, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I believe that, but I can hope for the best. So, Scott, thank you for coming on with us again tonight.
No problem at all, mate. No problem at all. Tom, well, thank you for doing that interview. Just to touch up on everybody, we're trying these sort of new formats of pods while it's the kind of international scene. So if you can let us know in the comments if they're any good, they're just a wee bit of feedback would be brilliant. Thanks for having me, Billy. No problem.
Yep, thank you, Thommo, again.
No, thank you, Billy. As I say, it was really, really interesting to speak to fans of a fan of another club, getting their views on players. So yeah, it was a really good half-hour chat with him, and really enjoyed it. And thanks again for having me on. Love coming on and chatting.
No problem, mate. No problem. Again, thank you everybody for listening and watching. If you do like us, please subscribe. Please tell your friends about us. Thank you for all the people that comment as well. It gives us things to talk about during the pod. So we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you.